Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am Dawn Westmoreland coming from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, coming from WPVM LP 103.7, the voice of Asheville. My show, The Empowered Whistleblower, is about blowing the whistle on empowering others, whether it's in the workplace or personal life. I am delighted I have a Marine veteran, Jake LaRue, who lives very close to Asheville, North Carolina, where I'm at. He's actually in Leicester, North Carolina, and he is a horse professional. He's a military veteran, and he's doing great things with horses and Mustangs. Jake, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
So glad to have you on. And if you haven't heard, this show is syndicated. It could be picked up in Canada, the Virgin Islands, or the United States. So listen in wherever you're at. My show airs every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone in Asheville, but you may pick it up a different date and time. Jake, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for your service, your sacrifices, and all you've done in the Marines. I know it's had an impact on you, positive and probably negative. Is that correct?
Well, best and worst time of my life.
Yeah, yes. So you were in the Marines and you got out of the Marines and you said you had some, we were talking before, some difficulties with the transition.
I did. I had a difficult time readjusting to civilian life when I got out. I enjoyed being a Marine. It really wasn't top of my list of things to do to get out, but the situation was at the time we had military cutbacks and there were some changes happening, and I wasn't going to be happy with what was happening, so I got out and I didn't adjust well. I got in. I had a hard time getting used to the way, the rhythm, the pattern of the civilian world. About the time I felt like I was getting down and comfortable with things, 9/11 happened, and I tried to re-enlist, but it had some injuries that prevented me from going back in. And I took it personal, and I hurt deeply from it, and I had some really bad behavior that resulted from that. It took me a long time to recognize it as well. And when I did recognize it, I needed to make some changes, and horses were how I went about helping that happen.
Mm, that's unreal. And I want to give a shout out to the Marines. And I do this often. It's because of the United States Marines that I joined the Air Force back in 85. I saw my brother go in at 17 in the Marines, and I knew I was not Marine material, but I knew I wanted something bigger and better. So it's because the Marines that I joined the Air Force and now retired. So a big shout out to all the Marines.
That's that's funny. It's because of the Air Force that I joined the Marines.
Oh my God. That, yeah. And when I was an Air Force recruiter in South Dakota, mind you, I grew up in Florida, there was a young man, his whole family, generations, Marine, 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 Marine. But he'd still come and talk to me. But he said, you can't recruit me in the Air Force. I am dedicated. I am loyal. I'm going in the Marines. I said, I get it because it's a special breed that goes in the Marine. It's a very, very special person. So, Jake, you had a hard time when you got out, which I know a lot of veterans do. That transition is a hell of a shakeup. You, what, well, let me ask you this. How did you get into the horses? I mean, you realize you got into some trouble, you're having a hard time. I mean, where did the horses fit in?
Well, I think something that I realized in hindsight now, 30 years later, that I was chasing that adrenaline rush, that excitement that I'd always had in the Marine Corps, and I was chasing that sense of unity and that bonding that I had with the friendships that I developed in the Corps. And I got myself into some, uh, let's say, unproductive situations because of that. In the late 2000, late first decade of the 21st century, I moved to New Orleans for a little while. And while there, I figured out that New Orleans is a 24-hour city. It never slows down. And for somebody who's diagnosed with PTSD, that kind of puts you at an elevated state 24/7. So even my baseline already being high, living in that city, I was at an elevated state already 24/7. I started drinking a lot, started abusing some substances, and I ended up in a little bit of a violent altercation. I went to Orleans Parish Prison for a very short period of time
Mhm.
for aggravated battery. When I got out, I needed to do something different. I needed to make some changes. I knew I was done with living the way that I'd lived. And
Mhm.
I came to Asheville largely because of the Charles George VA here in Asheville. It's got one of the best reputations in the country for mental health. I
Hmm.
went into an inpatient facility for a little while and started getting treatment at the VA. And I started working on mindfulness practice as a way to help balance and settle myself. And I got very serious about it and decided I wanted to try out a 5-day meditation retreat out in Hot Springs, North Carolina, not Hot Springs, California. So I went and sat for 5 days in silence at this meditation retreat and met a woman, Shannon Knapp, who runs Horse Sense of the Carolinas and the nonprofit Heart of Horse Sense. And she told me about their program and that they were starting to get more involved with veterans. Would I be interested in checking it out? And at this stage in my own recovery process, I was starting to look for a way to give back. I knew that I had been kind of a force of destruction in the universe, and it was time for me to try to make some living amends and do something a little more sort of productive and constructive for the world I lived in. And I knew nothing about horses. So this was intriguing. You know, therapy horses. So I know what therapy dogs are. They bring them out to the college campus on test day and exam day because kids get stressed out and they can pet the horses or the dogs and they feel a little bit better. And they take them in to see people at nursing homes and things like that. And so I'm going to go meet these horses. They're going to hand me a grooming kit. I'm going to brush on a horse. We're going to kick up a little oxytocin. Everybody's going to feel better. And I'm going to go home. And tomorrow I'll get up and do the rest of my day just like I did the day before. And I don't think I could have been more wrong. I refer to meeting horses in an open setting on their grounds, on their terms, as my road to Damascus experience. It was such an I've sat there. What is this? What is this? Where has this been all my life? How do I do this? How do I get into this? These things are amazing, and I felt a spiritual connection to them right away. And that was 2013, and I haven't done anything else since.
Mm. What an amazing journey. I grew up with horses at the age of 7 till I went in the Air Force because I was almost 21 when I went in the Air Force. And I get it. I grew up shy, insecure. I was bullied as a kid. And Boozer was this red, brown quarter horse, and he was a character. I mean, this horse was so smart.
Mhm.
He knew how to get rid of you, buck you off, but he couldn't do it to me. And I loved him. We had a tight bond. So I get that spirituality and the bond with the horses.
Right.
Now, right now, Jake, you're involved with veterans, primarily with veterans. And
Mhm.
how are you bringing veterans to you to get help with the horses?
So I started a small nonprofit called Man with a Horse Project in February 2022. Um, I had been invited the year before to go to Colorado to facilitate a veterans retreat at a horse sanctuary in Fairplay, Colorado, called the Middle Way. Um, and it was a fantastic experience. We had 4 veterans from their region there. We worked with um, formerly free-roaming wild horses off of public lands that had been rounded up by the Bureau of Land Management. I fell in love with them,
Mm.
with just the kind of energy and the difference in an animal that has lived its entire life, as in the wild, as opposed to one that's been dependent on us from the start, and what it took out of me, what it took from me, and what it taught me to learn how to connect and bond with them. And I decided this was something I needed to expand on, something I needed to do. So I started um, looking at adopting a wild horse with the intention of bringing him here to North Carolina and helping other veterans have the experience that I had had at that retreat out in Colorado. So during an online auction, I found out that the horse that I had set my eyes on, and I set my eyes on this one. He was named by an advocate named LaRue. My last name is LaRue, so I was like, "Hey, this is my boy." And I
That is,
found out about him while he was still wild. And when I heard he'd been rounded up and was coming up on auction, I said, "I'm getting him." I found out during that auction that he had a brother named Caesar, same sire, 3 months apart in age. They'd been together their entire lives. They were rounded up together at 6 years old. They were in long-term holding uh, pens together, and there was an advocacy crew called For the Love of Aria that was out of Colorado that would step up to help with the auction fee if I would promise to keep the two of them together. So I got I got two of them.
Oh, that is amazing. Now, how are they doing now at this time?
I I brought them to North Carolina on August 9th. We had a 36-hour trailer ride from Fairplay, Colorado, and
Mhm.
they're doing really well. They adjusted. They fell in love with green grass. They've come out of a primarily desert environment. They fell in love with green grass rather quickly, and to be a little cautious with introducing them to that. Um, the younger one, the 3 month younger one, his name is Caesar, and he was the what I call the unintentional Mustang. He's the one that I did not know I was going to end up with, and he is fantastic. We can touch him all over his body. We can brush him and groom him. I can pick up all 4 feet. I have not haltered him, but I can pet him and rub him on his neck, behind his ears, and down his backside with the halter now. So the haltering's coming soon. The other one, LaRue, he's a little bit angry about that 36-hour trailer ride.
Mhm.
So he's coming along. I can touch him. I can touch the side of his face and his cheeks, get past the cheeks, and he decides that's enough and walks away. We're going to start. We're going to start doing some round pen work with him. And now that Caesar's friendly enough, we can separate the two. We'll start trying to put some focus on him and see how he comes along. But they're doing well. They're doing really well.
Now, how did they handle Hurricane Helene that we just had not too long ago?
Oh
It must
man.
have been upsetting and terrifying for the horses and for you too, Jake.
Oh, I was completely freaked out about what would happen to the horses. I drove out to the farm the morning of the storm, and dodging fallen trees to get there. And they saw more waterfall through Hurricane Helena than they have seen their entire lives. They get 2 to 3 inches a year where they came from, the Sandwash Basin of Colorado,
Mhm.
and they got, well, I don't even know how much, but fortunately our boarding stables and our farm is on a hillside, and there's decent drainage for it. So we didn't have any real flooding. We got a wet barn, but other than that, we didn't get any real flooding. And they 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 stood through it like champs. They stood in the shelter and watched it come down.
For his dedication. I grew up with horses, from the age of 7 to almost 21, and my stepfather was a horseman, and his philosophy is exactly what you just exuded, is you take care of the horses first before you eat or do anything for yourself. The horses always come first.
Yeah. Well, you can't explain to them why it's not happening on their calendar. You know,
Mhm.
they don't quite get that. So you're here. There's feed in the barn. It's not here in front of me. There's a problem. You know.
Yeah. Now I
Yeah, they
became
they come first.
Yeah, I became aware that you just won an award recently, pretty prestigious award. In fact, a couple people reached out to me and said, "Hey, you need to get a hold of Jake LaRue." And I'm like, "Well, I know him. I know him. I've met you one time out at Horse Sense."
Uh-huh.
What is the award and how did you receive it?
Oh, hold on. I've got that right here, actually. It's the whoop. I don't know if that's going to show because I have a screen background. There we go. It's the S4 Asheville Veterans Resiliency Award, and it was presented to me as the founder of Man with a Horse Project, and for the work I've been doing trying to, well, basically teach other veterans, help other veterans have the experience that helped me heal. So,
Mm,
uh,
congratulations. That's a pretty big
thanks.
deal.
Yeah, the man who awarded it to me, Command Sergeant Major Saeed Mustafa, I met him a year ago at a fundraiser for Heart of Horse Sense. He was a speaker there, and we connected really well. We've talked a few times on the phone since then and stayed in touch. It was a real honor to have him give that to me.
Yeah, and well deserved because he obviously sees what you're doing and how you're impacting veterans. Now, if a veteran's listening in or somebody out there has veterans in their family or know of veterans, how can they reach out to you for, support or to get help? And what if they're across the nation in California and they want to work with you? How do you deal with that?
Well, once a year, I fly veterans out to Fairplay, Colorado, to the Middle Way Sanctuary,
Mm.
and there is a retreat that we host there for 5 days between Man with a Horse Project and the Middle Way, and we bring veterans in from all around the nation. Last year we had, or this year actually, it happens the last weekend of of July, first weekend of August, or rather, yeah, first week of August. So we brought in 8 veterans from around the country. We had veterans from as far away as Florida and Washington come in. The best way to contact me is either through the messages, through the email on our website.
Mhm.
We are manwithahorse.org or jake@manwithahorse.org. Just reach out. We're also on Facebook and Instagram.
So what do you hope to do in the next 5 years with your organization, Jake? Do you have some goals right now?
Well, as you know through meeting me at Horse Sense, I've been involved in equine therapy for a long time. I'm an equine professional. I'm not actively working in equine therapy with the program that I have. The idea was inspired by something we did with Heart of Horse Sense. We called it the Wild Bunch. We had 3 feral horses from Hope for Horses, a horse rescue, horses that were untouched. And we brought in a group of veterans who agreed to take time out of their week. Each one committed to a different day of the week to come in and feed the horses, take care of the horses, start working with and connecting with the horses. We ended up getting all of those horses to the point that I call equine good citizenship. Will they come to halter? Will they stand still for vet care, for farrier care? Will they stand still next to a mounting block? Will they allow you to do the basic safety handling, follow you on lead, trailer load and unload? Once they get to that point, we gave them back to Hope for Horses to adopt out. And I said, well, what if we could do this with wild horses? And that sat there and stewed with me for a while. And when this auction presented itself and I ended up with the wild horses, I said, okay, game on. So the intention is these guys are my teachers. They're going to help me figure out the best way to teach other veterans, and other veterans through them learn how to connect with these sort of horses. The long-term plan going forward is in a year or two bring in another one. And veterans that have been through our process learned a little bit about health and welfare, and about health care, then they can, and about training and gentling, then they can help other veterans learn and mentor. And horses that come in from the wild horse ranges after that will then be put out to adoption for qualified adopters. So we've got horses off of the range, wild horses off the range that have been started and gentled by veterans that are then open for adoption.
I love that, gentled by veterans. Now, I have to share with you, out at Horse Sense, which is in Leicester, North Carolina, which you're also affiliated with, I was one of the first female veterans to start the equine therapy. And a delightful lady, Cappy, I think it's Tutsetti. Am I saying her last name correct? Tutsetti.
I think so. Cappy Tassetti.
Cappy's like, Don, you gotta go. And I'm like, but I don't need it. I'm
That
fine.
woman radiates positive energy.
Yeah, she's amazing. I love her. I love her. My mom loves her. Everybody loves her. So she's like, go to it, go to it. And I'm like, I don't need it, Cappy. I don't need it. I'm good. I'm a life coach. I know how to reframe things, right? I'm healed. I'm good. Well, I'll make it a short story. I busted out crying the third day. I think it was the third day. Yeah. And I didn't realize I had touched on some anger inside me from having being involved in an accident that wasn't my fault, and having a brain injury that messed me up medically for over a year. And that came out, and I was able to work on that. So what is some of the biggest surprises for you working with horses?
Well, I tell people that big gray quarter horse named Honor
Mm.
changed my world perspective about every interaction that I'd had with anybody since I got home from the Marine Corps. So I went to a clinic, and I've been working at Horse Sense, been playing at Horse Sense with this big gray quarter horse named Honor, who had a very, very narrow parameters for what was acceptable human behavior.
Mm.
And I say to this day, Honor taught me more about myself than any person ever could, because some of the things he taught me about myself, if he was a person, I probably would have hit him. So at this clinic, working with the Pirelli School of Natural Horsemanship, and we're trying to work on a 22-foot lead rope, and I'm asking him to do a circle around me. And I want him to do the circle around me at a trot. And I would pick up my personal energy, pick up that energy and encourage him to move forward. And he would start trotting, and he'd get behind me, and he'd stop, and he'd start walking again. This happened a few times. My frustration level is getting high, and the instructor comes over and says, "Show me what's going on." So I ask him to back up. I send him off on his circle. He takes off at his trot, gets around behind me, and starts walking again. She says, "Well, you're using pressure to ask him to move, and then you're never letting it go. You're never dropping it again." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, you're encouraging him to go, and then you're holding that energy, you're holding that pressure, you're holding that tension. He's getting confused. Am I doing what you're telling me to do? Obviously not, so he stops. Then that energy gets bigger, and then he's like, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" You're confusing your horse, you're scaring him. I need you to relax. Send him on his pattern and relax. And I was a little bit upset. I'm still in that frame of mind where I was a little bit pissed about it and frustrated with the horse, and you're telling me I'm doing it wrong. So I got thinking, though, what do you mean by relaxing? She says, you physically take a deep breath, drop your shoulders. For you, kick a knee. Put your weight on one side, let the other leg relax. Just give a physical posture of relaxing. I really wasn't with it at the time. I was frustrated. I went home that night and I looked at my wife and I said, "Tell me something, honey. Do I look relaxed?" She says, "Well, that's relaxed for you. You tend to be pretty high strung." And I talked to a few other people that I knew that afternoon, that evening, and I got the same kind of reaction. And I thought about it, and I'm still carrying that Marine Corps attitude and energy. I'm still, coming at things aggressively. I'm still communicating with people, eyes, eye contact, shoulders squared, feet forward, very direct. And I didn't realize that people were taking that as intimidation and as threatening. And I just figured that was just how I felt inclined to communicate.
Sure.
That was just what I was used to. Step forward, firm handshake kind of thing, which there's nothing wrong with, but it doesn't go over that great in every setting. So I went back to the clinic feeling a little humbled the next day, and I asked Honor to back up on the lead, and I sent him on the pattern, and I exaggerated the whole concept of relaxing, and he held the trot all the way around the circle a couple of times over. And I asked him to come in, and he did, and I got a little teary-eyed over it. And where I started thinking more deeply on this, and this is where the miracle of working with horses and playing with horses comes in, is what happens in the arena is a pretty good example of what happens in your outside world. And I realized that jobs that I couldn't hold down, failed relationships that I'd had, negative interactions that I'd had with law enforcement, which I deserved. Love my law enforcement brothers and sisters. I definitely brought it on myself. But I was bringing that confrontational energy in. I was bringing that level of aggression in. And I was setting the tone for all of the interactions that I had with other people by going into the situation already there. Yeah. And it was eye-opening. I said it was world perspective changing for me. I realized that I was I can't say this on the radio, but I was one of those a-hole guys. So I needed to not be that anymore. And what did I need to do to change? And by spending time with that horse and learning different things from that horse about myself and how to calm my bull, how to slow things down, I learned more about empathy. I learned more about compassion. I learned more about connection and relationships. And then in 2018, I graduated from college with my social work degree, and I got my first horse, a really spastic little Tennessee walking horse named Blackjack. And he to this day is my heart horse, and he's absolutely wonderful. And I worked with him from the go.
Wow.
And he's taught me even more about myself. When I get to work specifically with the male veterans who come into a program like mine and think they're going to be doing cowboy stuff, and they don't realize the unspoken part is they're learning how to connect with their femininity. They're learning how to connect with their nurturing side because they have to care for these animals. They're learning to connect with their compassion and empathy side because this animal, the way that we handle them, the way that we play with them is not through force, fear, and intimidation, but through connection and choice. And they're not going to choose to be with you if you want to make them do things. You've got to learn how to be more open with what's going on with you, because you can't walk into the arena, you can't walk into the round pen hiding your feelings. Horses are the ultimate poker players. They can read everything going on with you. They can tell if that lion, that mountain lion on the other side of the watering hole, is he here for a drink or is he hungry scoping me out? They're looking for the most minute body language. They know more about what's going on inside myself than I do. And as one veteran that I work with said, if you don't have your insides matching your outside, they're not going to trust you. Don't know what's going on inside your own self. How is this 1,000-pound prey animal going to trust this alpha predator to be nice to him?
Some really good insights. Jake, are you looking for any kind of support with your mission? Like, are you looking for volunteers, donations? You're doing great stuff helping veterans. And, me being a veteran, I get it, how much we all need help. And I want to say this, because I grew up with 7 brothers and stepbrothers, and, being in the Air Force with mostly men, I know that y'all are conditioned to suck it up, keep it inside. But I have to say, I really admire, respect you even more for being so open, vulnerable, transparent, which allows other people, whether they're male or female, to be that way too. Because I like how you touched on, getting in touch of your self-compassion side, the female side.
Mm-hmm. Well, the whole human being is not all masculine or all feminine. It's an integration of the two. The integration of the two archetypes and the ability to go either way, to be either kind of person. To be able to harbor that, that nurturing sense, but still be able to step up and be the defender and be the protector. And how do we balance that so that we're not always in one position or the other?
Yeah. Are you looking for any support or help at this time?
I am always looking for support. Being a nonprofit, where we will never say no to financial support. Horses are expensive.
Yes,
Horses are for people who love hard work and hate money. So, so, yeah.
A friend said,
Well, I'm always looking for volunteers. I'm always looking for veterans who want to learn about what we're doing. Veterans are always welcome in the program. Some of the other things we're offering right now is the stable where my program is based out of, Blackberry Stable, has a full moon equestrian, which has riding lessons, and I'm scholarshiping veterans for riding lessons that want to get involved in that part of it. We're teaching natural horsemanship and connected horsemanship to veterans. If they want to learn about horse care, horse nutrition, that sort of thing, I'm happy to help them get on a rotation with helping take care of our horses. And spending time with them. And anybody that comes and spends time volunteering with us, the volunteer time includes horse time. There are a number of horses that participate in our program, as well as my 3. So we have plenty for you to do. Nobody wants to come out and do anything just for barn work. We're in it for the love of it. So I want people to come out and get some fur time too.
Yes, and let's talk about how to reach you, where you're located one more time as we wrap up, Jake.
Sure. I can be reached by email at jake@manwithahorse.org. I can be reached through the message board on Facebook. There is an emailing subscription sign up on our website, www.manwithahorse.org. Again, Facebook and Instagram. And I publicize my number too, so no problem giving that out. I'm at 828-767-9050. Please text instead of call. Most of the time I can't get good reception, or I can't answer right now, but I will respond to text messages.
Yeah, and if you're wondering why, it's because we're in the mountains, and so we have all kind of microclimates, and sometimes we're just in areas where it's hard to get a hold of. Jake,
if I'm playing with a horse, I got the ringer turned off. So
there you go. Again, thank you for being on this show. We appreciate your service, your dedication as a Marine, your vulnerability, your transparency, what you're doing to help veterans. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show so that I could share this. This is my passion, and you get me talking, I have a hard time shutting up. So.
Well, anytime is something you're passionate about, and it's very obvious to us that you're passionate about helping people, helping veterans. So all the best to you. I'll see my folks listening in. See you next time. Hear you next time. Stay empowered and be well.
Thank you.